Every dictator follows the same path. First comes the charm, then the obsession, and finally the terror. We've seen it in Hitler. We've seen it in Stalin. And 3 centuries earlier, England saw it in Henry VIII. By now, Henry had everything he ever wanted. A crown, a church of his own making, and the legacy of 6 wives. But power is a drug. The more you have, the more paranoid you become. And so begins the blood-soaked final act of Henry's reign. A tale of rebellions, betrayals, and executions that would leave England scarred for generations. The Henry of 1509 was unrecognizable by the 1540s. Once a handsome, golden prince admired across Europe, he had become swollen, diseased, and cruel. His waistline ballooned to nearly 50 inches. His leg ulcers festered, filling his chambers with the stench of rot. He could barely walk, relying on servants to move him. And yet, his temper remained sharper than ever. This was no longer the playful Renaissance prince. This was a tyrant, locked in his own paranoia. Every glance, every whisper, every rumor could be treason. When Henry tore England away from the Catholic Church to marry in Boleyn, it wasn't just a personal scandal. It was a national earthquake. The Pope excommunicated him. Catholic Europe saw him as a heretic. But Henry didn't care. He declared himself the supreme head of the Church of England. Think about that. One man placed himself above priests, above bishops, even above the Pope. To oppose Henry's new church was not only heresy, it was treason. And treason meant death. Dictators throughout history have blurred the line between religion and state. Hitler twisted Christianity into a weapon. Stalin replaced faith with fear of the party. Henry did the same. God's law was now Henry's law. But not everyone agreed. In 1536, a massive rebellion erupted in the north of England. Tens of thousands of commoners rose up in what became known as the Pilgrimage of Grace. Why? Because Henry had dissolved the monasteries. Centuries-old abbeys were smashed, their treasures looted, their lands seized. To ordinary people, monasteries weren't just symbols of faith. They were schools, hospitals, and lifelines for the poor, now all gone. Led by Robert Aske, the rebels marched under banners of the 5 Wounds of Christ, demanding the restoration of the Catholic Church. Their numbers were so vast, the government panicked. Henry pretended to negotiate. He promised mercy. He promised reforms. The rebels dispersed, believing their king would listen.
But Henry lied.
Within months, the leaders were hunted down. Robert Aske was dragged through the streets in chains and hanged in chains from York's castle walls until his body rotted. Hundreds were executed in towns across the north. The message was clear: oppose Henry and you die. Henry's paranoia didn't stop with rebels. Crept into his own circle. Thomas More, once his closest advisor and friend, was executed for refusing to accept him as head of the church. Bishop John Fisher met the same fate. Even Thomas Cromwell, the brilliant minister who engineered Henry's marriage to Anne Boleyn and masterminded the break with Rome, eventually fell. Cromwell had risen too high, gained too much influence. Henry, like all dictators, couldn't stand competition. In 1540, Cromwell was arrested, accused of treason, and executed. Imagine the fear in court. One day, you're the king's right hand. The next, you're headless on Tower Hill. This was Henry's England. Loyalty meant nothing, only survival. Henry's religious revolution didn't just destroy monasteries. It tore communities apart. Protestants and Catholics alike lived in fear, never sure which way the king's faith would swing. One of the most tragic victims was an Askew, a young Protestant woman. She dared to challenge the Catholic traditions Henry still clung to. For heresy, she was arrested and tortured on the rack. Even in agony, she refused to renounce her beliefs. In 1546, she was burned alive at the stake in Smithfield, London. Her crime? Reading the Bible in English. Henry's England was a land where words, prayers, even private thoughts could get you killed. By the late 1540s, Henry ruled less like a king and more like a dictator. He had spies in every corner of the kingdom. He demanded absolute obedience. He executed nobles, priests, commoners, even queens. And like all dictators, he built a cult of fear around himself. Even his own children were pawns. His daughter Mary was forced to renounce her mother Catherine of Aragon's Catholic faith or face disinheritance. Elizabeth, and Boleyn's daughter, grew up in constant danger. Even Edward, his precious son, was kept under strict control, groomed as a future king but shielded from the chaos around him. Henry was no longer just a monarch. He was a tyrant, one whose every whim shaped life and death for millions. By his last years, Henry was a shadow of the prince he once was. His body was failing, his mind consumed by suspicion. He rarely left his chambers, hidden from the people who once adored him. But even broken, he wielded terrifying power. His signature could condemn a man to death. His gaze could silence a room. On January 28, 1547, Henry VIII died. He was 55 years old. His body, so swollen it barely fit in his coffin, was laid to rest in St. George's Chapel, Windsor, next to Jane Seymour, the wife he called his true queen. But death did not erase his legacy. Henry VIII left behind 3 children, Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward. Each would rule England in turn. Each would face the chaos their father created. He also left behind a kingdom torn apart by religion, scarred by executions, and forever changed by his lust for power. 6 wives, thousands of dead, a church divided, a nation transformed. Was Henry a Renaissance king, bringing England into the modern age? Or was he a dictator using faith, love, and fear as weapons? The truth is both. But here's the twist. Henry's death wasn't the end of the Tudor drama. It was just the beginning, because his children, Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward, would inherit not only his throne, but his chaos. And their reigns would be even more dramatic, more violent, and more extraordinary than his own.